So in Xsoar we have something called a long running instance. The long running instance is the one that receive accept the connection from other device connecting into the Xsoar server. So in this case, for the Microsoft team or the EDL, Palo Alto EDL, we have an option to call from Microsoft team or from the firewall into the Xsoar engine or to the Xsoar server via HTTP URL. So in order to do that, you will have a long running integration that's set up on the Xsoar itself, and it will be served to outside world in using this kind of URL HTTPS with the instant and executed and instant name, but it's also mirroring this into HTTP traffic with the port with the port of like 7000 or any port behind. So um, in this situation, we want to test out that we, which IP address should we go in to collect those data. Like for this case, right, we have a Xsoar server 52.243.77.33. Whether we go to the server or we go to the engine to collect the IP, the information. So come to the server configuration. In this setup, we use the EDL service in Palo Alto um, PanOS to test, and we will query any indicator that is bad and serve to outside world with the listening port of 7001. Right now, we do not do any username password first, and we just run with no engine. Okay. So with the no engine, we definitely will go to the IP address of the Xsoar server itself to collect the list of those bad reputations indicator. What happen if when we change this to be served over an engine? When we using the engine, then we will either go to we will go to this IP address or we will go back to the Xsoar server IP address. So let's test it out. In this case, if we go back to the server, it's gonna say that because you already run it on the engine and now you call link to the server cannot reroute it. So we have to use the IP address of the engine itself, which is 138.91.33.7. We do not have the option to run it on HTTPS, but instead we have to go to HTTP with the port of 7000 as we config. Yeah, as you can see here is the list. If we still want to try to come back to the link, the HTTPS link on the Xsoar engine, you will see that it returned 404, which do not serve the purpose here. So remember that when we use the engine, this is what IP address and what port and the URL we're gonna use. So it's HTTP. Then the other question is that do we use authentication at all? If over here we do some configuration on the username password. So for demonstration, I just pass some password here, and let's try again on this side. I do it a no engine so that we can test it out directly on the server itself. Yeah, so basic authentication fail. It means that we need to use basic authentication when we connect to this URL again to collect. So to test it out, we use Postman to take a look on this with the basic authentications that's set here with the username and password. So we send it. Yaha, we receive the list. If let's say we change the password, different password, it failed. The basic authentication is failed. So clearly it's using the username and password and the basic authentication to receive to log into the URL and collect the info.